The knock at the door hit the house like thunder. Linda froze in the hallway. For a second, nobody moved. Ian sat in the living room, his hands resting near his tablet, his face still pale from everything that had happened. Bob sat close beside him, watching Ian more than anything else. Bob looked up. "Who is it?" Bob asked. Linda swallowed hard and walked to the door. When she opened it, two police officers were standing on the porch. Her heart dropped. "The cops," Linda called back softly. Bob stood up right away, moving closer to Ian. Linda turned back to the officers and forced herself to stay calm. "May I help you?" One of the officers looked down at his notepad. "Are you Linda Desith?" "Yes," Linda said. "We received a report from a man named Rod Desith. He claims Linda Desith, Fran Desith, Jen Desith, and Ian Desith have been ignoring his restraining order and harassing him." Linda stared at the officer like she had heard him wrong. "Harassing him?" she said. "My son wanted to tell his father he has ALS. How is that a crime?" Ian's breathing changed from the couch. His eyes widened and his fingers started shaking over his tablet. Bob stepped in front of him a little, not to hide him, but to protect him. "Officer," Bob said carefully, "Ian is sick. He just found out he has ALS. He wanted his dad to know, that's all this was." The second officer looked past Linda and into the living room. "Is Ian here?" Linda looked back at Ian, then at Bob. Ian slowly typed on his tablet. The tablet spoke in its flat voice. "I am Ian. I wanted my dad to know I am sick. He said he did not know me." The room went silent. The first officer's expression softened a little, but he stayed professional. "Mr. Rod Desith says he told all of you not to contact him." Linda shook her head. "He walked away from his own son." Ian typed that he had ALS and Rod walked to another woman and said he didn't know him, then he sent bodyguards to threaten us with cops. Now you're here. Fran came down the hallway with Jen behind her. Fran's eyes went straight to the officers. "What did Rod do now?" The officer glanced at his notes again. "Rod Desith claims you all refuse to respect his boundaries." Jen let out a bitter laugh, but it broke halfway through. "His boundaries," she said. "Ian is his son." Ian typed again, slower this time. "I did not want trouble, I just wanted my dad." The tablet voice filled the room, and Linda covered her mouth as tears started to fall. Bob turned toward Ian. "You didn't do anything wrong," Bob said. "You hear me, nothing." The officer looked at Ian for a long moment. "Do you have any paperwork showing there is a restraining order?" Bob asked. The officer shook his head. "We don't have an active restraining order in the system right now. We have a complaint. That's why we're here, to speak with everyone and make sure this does not escalate." Linda's face changed from fear to anger. "So he lied." "I'm saying we don't see an active order right now," the officer said, "but we are advising everyone not to contact Rod Desith again tonight." Fran crossed her arms. "Trust me, nobody wants to." Ian looked down at his tablet. His hands trembled, but he typed anyway. "I will not call him again." The tablet said the words out loud. Linda turned toward him fast. "Ian." Ian kept typing. He made his choice. Bob knelt beside Ian's chair and put a hand on his arm. "Ian, don't decide that while you're hurting." Ian's eyes filled with tears. He typed again. "He told a stranger he did not know me, then he called the cops on me for being sick." Nobody had an answer for that. The officers stood quietly, both of them now understanding this was not a normal complaint. It was a family breaking apart in real time. The first officer closed his notebook. "Look, we're not here to arrest anyone, but for tonight, please do not contact Rod Desith again. If he contacts you, document it. If his bodyguards threaten you again, call us." Linda nodded slowly. "I understand." The officer looked at Ian. "I'm sorry for what you're going through." Ian did not look up. He typed one final message. "Thank you, please tell him I will leave him alone." The officer gave a small nod, but Bob's jaw tightened. After the cops left, Linda shut the door and leaned against it. For a moment the whole house was quiet. Then Ian's tablet spoke again. "I'm gay, he hates me, I'm sick, he hates me." The words hit the room harder than the cops ever could. Linda's face crumbled. "No, baby," she whispered. Ian typed again, tears running down his face. He hated me before ALS, now he has a reason to leave forever. Fran dropped to her knees in front of him. No, Ian, listen to me. Rod's hate is Rod's problem, not yours. Ian shook his head. The tablet spoke again. He was my dad. Jen wiped her eyes and stepped closer. He was supposed to be your dad, she said. There's a difference. Bob sat beside Ian and put his arm around him. You being gay did not make him leave, Bob said softly. You being sick did not make him leave. He left because he is too weak to love you the way you deserve. Ian's lips trembled. He typed slowly. I wanted him to say he loves me. Linda covered her mouth, trying not to sob. Fran took Ian's hand. I know, she said, and you should have gotten that. You should have gotten a father who ran to you, not away from you. Ian looked toward the door where the cops had just left. The tablet spoke again. He called the cops on me. Bob nodded, his voice breaking. Yeah, and that was cruel, but Ian, you are still loved in this house. Ian cried harder. I don't feel loved by him. Linda walked over and knelt beside Fran. Then let us love you louder, she said. Ian looked at his mother. Linda took his other hand. I am sorry I could not make your father be the man you needed. I am sorry you had to find out this way. But I promise you, Ian, you are not losing this family. Jen nodded. You're stuck with us. Fran tried to smile through her tears. Yes, sorry, little brother, we're annoying, but we're not leaving. Ian let out a broken sound that was almost a laugh, but it turned into another sob. Bob pulled him closer. You can be gay, you can be sick, you can be scared, you can be angry, you can be all of that, and we're still here. Ian closed his eyes. For a long moment he did not type anything. Then his fingers moved again. I hate that I still want him. The room went quiet. Bob rested his forehead near Ian's shoulder. That doesn't make you weak, Bob said, that makes you human. Linda nodded. You can miss someone who hurt you, you can want love from someone who failed you, that does not mean you did anything wrong. Ian opened his eyes, red and tired. He typed one more message. I don't want to call him again, but I want my dad. Fran squeezed his hand. I know. Jen leaned in. We'll sit with you through that. Bob looked at Linda, Fran and Jen, then back at Ian. Tonight we don't chase Rod, tonight we take care of Ian. Ian's shoulders shook as he cried, but this time no one tried to fix it too fast. They stayed around him. Linda held one hand. Fran held the other. Jen stood behind him with her hand on his shoulder. Bob stayed beside him, steady and quiet. Ian cried for the father who walked away, while the family who stayed made sure he did not have to break alone. After a while, Ian's fingers hovered over the tablet again. Everyone stayed quiet, giving him room to speak. Then the tablet said, Mom, I forgive you. Linda's face twisted like the words hurt her more than anger ever could. No, she whispered, shaking her head. Ian, no, I hurt you too, don't forgive me. Ian looked at her, tears still on his face, but his eyes were steady. He typed again. I know. Linda covered her mouth. The tablet continued. But you came back, you fought with Dad about me being gay, you fought for me when he made fun of me for being fat as a teen. I forgive you for all of it, Mom. Linda broke. She dropped to her knees in front of Ian's chair and sobbed into her hands. I was supposed to protect you from him, she cried. I was your mother, I heard the things he said and sometimes I stayed quiet because I was scared of losing him. I let you think you were the problem. Ian shook his head and typed. I did think I was the problem. Linda looked up at him, devastated. I know, she said, and I hate myself for that. Ian typed slower. You hurt me, but you came back. Linda reached for his hand but stopped, afraid to touch him without permission. Ian moved his hand toward her. Linda took it gently and held it like it was something fragile. The tablet spoke again. Dad left, you stayed. Fran wiped her cheeks and looked away, trying to hold herself together. Jen whispered, Ian. Ian kept typing. I am still angry, I still remember, but I forgive you. Linda leaned forward, pressing her forehead against Ian's hand. I don't deserve that. Ian typed back. I know. A tiny broken laugh escaped Fran, even through her tears. Linda looked up, confused and crying. Ian's tablet spoke again. But I need my mom more than I need my anger. That finished Linda. She stood just enough to wrap her arms around Ian, careful of his body, careful of his chair, careful of everything he was carrying. Ian leaned into her as much as he could. "I am so sorry," Linda cried, "for every joke I let pass, for every time I told you to ignore him, for every time I acted like keeping peace mattered more than protecting you, for every time you cried alone because of us." Ian closed his eyes. His fingers moved again, even while Linda held him. "I was scared you hated me too." Linda pulled back fast and looked him in the eyes. "No, never. I was wrong, I was weak, I was scared, but I never hated you." Ian's lip trembled. The tablet spoke. "Dad did." Linda shook her head, crying harder. "Your father hates what he cannot control. That is not the same as you being wrong." Bob stepped closer. "And that does not make you unlovable, Ian." Fran nodded. "You were never too gay, never too fat, never too much. They made you feel that way because they were broken." Jen moved beside Linda and put a hand on Ian's shoulder. "You were a kid, you should have been protected." Ian stared down at his tablet. For a moment no words came out. Then he typed, "I wish teenage me heard that." Linda squeezed his hand. "Then I'm going to say it now, even if I'm late," she said. "You were my beautiful son then, you are my beautiful son now. You being gay was never shameful, your body was never shameful, your heart was never shameful." Ian started crying again, but this time it was softer. Linda kissed his hand. "I cannot undo what I did," she said, "but I can spend every day I have left proving that I choose you." Ian looked at her. The tablet spoke quietly. "Don't leave me like Dad." Linda's whole body shook. "I won't," she said. "I swear, Ian, I won't." Bob placed a hand on Ian's back. "We're all here." Fran nodded. "All of us." Jen leaned in closer. "Rod can run, we don't run." Ian looked around the room at the people still standing there. His mother. His sisters. Bob. The family that was messy, broken, sorry, angry, tired, and still there. He typed one last message. "I forgive you, Mom, but please don't make me regret it." Linda nodded through her tears. "I won't," she said, "not this time." And for the first time that night, Ian let his mother hold him without pulling away. Bob stood up slowly, giving Ian one last squeeze on the shoulder before walking toward the hallway closet. "All right," Bob said gently, "I'm going to grab a diaper. Ian, let's get you ready for bed so you can relax." Ian wiped at his face with a shaking hand. His eyes were red, his whole body tired from crying, but he nodded. He typed on his tablet. "Yes." The tablet voice came out small, almost exhausted. Linda looked at Bob, then back at Ian. "I can help," she said softly. Ian looked at her for a moment. Then he typed, "Stay with me." Linda's eyes filled again, but she held herself together this time. "I'm right here," she said. Bob came back with the clean diaper and supplies, keeping his voice calm and normal, like this was just another part of taking care of Ian, not something to be embarrassed about. Jen," Bob said, "give him a little privacy, okay?" Fran nodded right away. "Of course." Jen leaned down and kissed Ian on the top of his head. "We'll be right outside." Ian typed before they left. "Don't go far." Fran smiled sadly. "Never." The two sisters stepped into the hallway, leaving the door cracked just enough so Ian knew they were still close. Bob moved beside Ian's chair. "All right, buddy," he said, "we're going slow, no rushing tonight." Linda stayed near Ian's head, holding his hand while Bob helped him get ready. Ian looked embarrassed at first, his face turning away, but Bob kept everything respectful and quiet. "You had a hard night," Bob said. "You don't have to be brave through every second of it." Ian typed with one hand. "I hate needing this." Linda squeezed his fingers. "I know." Bob nodded. "You can hate it, that's allowed, but needing help doesn't make you less grown, less strong, or less Ian." Ian stared down at the tablet. "It makes me feel broken." Bob paused and looked at him. "No," Bob said, "ALS is trying to take pieces from you. That doesn't mean you are broken, it means we adjust and we take care of you." Linda brushed Ian's hair back from his forehead. "And we do it with love." Ian blinked fast, trying not to cry again. Bob finished helping him into a clean diaper and comfortable sleep clothes, then made sure Ian was settled safely. There, Bob said softly, all clean, bedtime mode. Ian let out a tired breath. Linda smiled through her tears. Bedtime mode, she repeated. Bob helped Ian get comfortable, checking that his tablet was within reach and that nothing was pulling or hurting him. Then he stepped back. You good? Bob asked. Ian typed. No. Bob's face softened. Honest answer, that's okay. Ian typed again. But better. Linda bent down and kissed his forehead. That's enough for tonight. Bob nodded. Better is enough. Fran knocked softly on the doorframe. Can we come back in? Ian looked at the door and typed. Yes. Fran and Jen came in quietly. Neither of them said anything about the diaper, the tears, or the mess of the night. They just came back like family was supposed to. Jen sat near the bed. Fran stood beside Linda. Ian looked at all of them, then typed one more message. Please don't let Dad ruin tomorrow too. Linda's mouth trembled, but she answered firmly. He doesn't get tomorrow. Bob pulled the blanket up over Ian. Nope, he said, tonight was enough, tomorrow belongs to you. Ian closed his eyes for a second. The tablet spoke one final time before he rested. I'm tired. Linda sat beside him and kept holding his hand. Then sleep, baby, she whispered, we're here. Bob dimmed the light. Fran and Jen stayed close. And Ian, clean, exhausted, and surrounded by the family that refused to leave, finally let his body sink into the quiet. Linda waited until Ian's eyes finally closed. Bob had dimmed the lights and Fran and Jen were sitting quietly nearby, making sure Ian knew he was not alone even while he slept. The house was calmer now, but Linda's mind was not. She stepped into the hallway and gently pulled Bob with her. Bob looked at her, already knowing what question was coming. Linda kept her voice low. Bob, she whispered, where are Rod and Ray? Bob's face changed. He looked back toward Ian's room, making sure Ian was still asleep. Then he let out a slow breath. Linda. Where are they? She asked again, her voice shaking now. Rod was supposed to be here, Ray too, where are they? Bob rubbed his hands over his face. Rod said he couldn't do this anymore, Bob said quietly. He said he couldn't see Ian this way. Linda stared at him. What? Bob swallowed hard. One night I was getting Ian ready for bed. I got him cleaned up, settled everything, when I came back out. His voice cracked. Rod and Ray were gone. Linda's eyes filled with horror. Gone. Bob nodded. 3 months, 2 hours, and 1 minute ago. Linda covered her mouth. Bob looked down, ashamed even though he had not been the one to leave. I know the exact time because Ian asked for Rod after I came out. I told him Rod needed air. I thought he did. I thought he'd come back. Linda's breath started coming faster. Bob, does Ian know? Bob shook his head fast. No, Ian doesn't know. Linda leaned back against the wall like her knees almost gave out. He thinks Rod is still coming back. Bob closed his eyes. He asks less now, but yeah, somewhere in him I think he still believes Rod and Ray are just away, that maybe Rod needed space, that maybe Ray was helping him calm down. Linda shook her head, tears slipping down her face. They abandoned him. Bob's jaw tightened. They left him with me, no goodbye, no talk, no plan. Rod just said he couldn't watch Ian lose more of himself. Ray followed him. Linda whispered, my God. Bob looked toward Ian's door. I stayed. I didn't know what else to do. Ian needed changes. He needed help getting to bed. He needed someone to tell him he wasn't disgusting or too much, so I stayed. Linda wiped her face hard. Why didn't you tell us? Bob's eyes flashed with pain. Because Ian begged me not to call you at first. He said everyone was already tired of him. He thought if I called, it meant I was giving up too. Linda's face broke. No. Bob nodded, tears in his eyes. And after that, every day got harder. He got weaker. Then the ALS news came. Then Rod showed up again only to pretend he didn't know him. Linda looked toward Ian's room like she wanted to run back in and hold him. He's been waiting for a man who already left. Bob's voice dropped. Yes. The hallway went silent. Then Linda whispered. And tonight Rod called the cops on him. Bob nodded. That's why I lost it when Ian typed that he would leave Rod alone. Because Rod already left him, Ian just doesn't know how long he's been gone. Linda pressed her hand against her chest. We have to tell him. Bob looked at her sharply. Not tonight. Linda opened her mouth, but Bob shook his head. Linda, not tonight. He already lost enough tonight. He found out his father denied him in public. The cops came. He cried about being gay, being sick, being hated. He forgave you. He barely made it to bed. Linda closed her eyes, tears falling harder. Bob softened his voice. He needs sleep before another truth breaks him. Linda nodded slowly, even though it hurt. Tomorrow then. Bob looked back at Ian's door. I don't know, he admitted, but soon, he deserves the truth, just not when he's this fragile. Linda wrapped her arms around herself. I keep thinking I know the worst thing Rod can do, she whispered. Then he finds something worse. Bob gave a bitter nod. Yeah. Fran stepped into the hallway quietly. Her face said she had heard enough. Rod and Ray left 3 months ago, she asked. Bob looked down. Yes. Fran's eyes filled with tears. And Ian doesn't know. Bob shook his head. Jen appeared behind Fran, covering her mouth. Oh my God, Jen whispered. Linda turned to them. Not tonight, she said softly. We do not tell him tonight. Fran nodded, but she looked furious. He has been blaming himself this whole time. Bob's face tightened. He blames himself for everything. Jen wiped her eyes. Then tomorrow we start undoing that. Bob looked at them exhausted. I need help, he admitted. I've been doing this alone for 3 months. I didn't want to fail him, but I'm tired. Linda stepped forward and took Bob's hand. You didn't fail him, she said. You stayed. Fran nodded. You stayed when his husband ran. Jen added, you stayed when his father ran. Bob's eyes filled again. I just didn't want him to wake up alone. Linda looked back toward Ian's room. He won't anymore. Inside the room, Ian shifted slightly in his sleep. Everyone froze. A second later, Ian's tablet lit up from the bed. His fingers moved weakly. The tablet spoke into the quiet house. Bob. Bob rushed back into the room, wiping his face before Ian could see. I'm here, buddy. Ian's eyes were barely open. He typed slowly. Don't go. Bob sat beside him right away. I'm not going anywhere. Linda, Fran, and Jen stood in the doorway, all of them trying not to cry too loudly. Ian looked past Bob and saw them. His tired eyes moved from face to face. Then he typed again. Everyone okay? Bob took a breath and forced a gentle smile. Yeah, he said, everyone's okay, we were just talking. Ian stared at him for a moment like he knew there was more, but he was too tired to chase it. The tablet spoke one more time. Stay till I sleep. Bob reached for Ian's hand. Always. Linda came in and sat on the other side of him. Fran and Jen came back quietly. Nobody told Ian the truth yet. Not about Rod. Not about Ray. Not about the 3 months, 2 hours, and 1 minute Bob had been carrying alone. Tonight they let Ian rest. But in the hallway something had changed. The secret was no longer Bob, alone. And tomorrow, the family would have to decide how to tell Ian that the people he had been waiting for had already chosen to leave. The next morning came too quietly. Sunlight pushed through the curtains, but the house still felt heavy. Linda, Fran, Jen, and Bob moved around like they were afraid any sound would break something. Ian woke up and looked around the room. Bob was sitting in the chair beside him. Linda was near the doorway with a cup of coffee she had barely touched. Fran and Jen were whispering in the hall. Ian blinked, then reached for his tablet. His fingers moved slowly. Why is everybody acting like someone died? Bob froze. Linda looked down. Fran and Jen stopped whispering. Ian looked from one face to another, already tired of the silence. He typed again. Say it. Bob rubbed his hands together, then leaned forward. Ian. Ian stared at him. Bob swallowed hard. Rod and Ray left. The room went silent. Linda's eyes filled with tears. Fran looked ready to explode. Jen covered her mouth, waiting for Ian to break. But Ian just stared at Bob. His face barely changed. Bob kept going softly. They left 3 months ago. One night after I got you ready for bed, Rod told me he couldn't do this anymore. He said he couldn't see you this way. When I came back out, he and Ray were gone. Linda started crying quietly. Ian, I'm so sorry, she whispered. Fran stepped closer. I'm going to kill him, she said under her breath. Jen grabbed Fran's arm. Fran. Bob kept his eyes on Ian. I didn't tell you because I thought it would destroy you. I was wrong to keep it from you, but I swear I was trying to protect you. Ian looked down at his tablet. Everyone waited. They waited for anger. They waited for crying. They waited for his whole body to fold under another loss. Instead, Ian typed, now that is out of the way, can I get clean? Bob blinked. Linda stared at him. Fran said what? Ian typed again. I am wet, I want to get cleaned. Bob's face twisted with pain. Ian. Ian looked at him, his eyes tired but clear. The tablet spoke again. I heard you, Rod left, Ray left, Dad hates me, Ray chose him, I have ALS, I still need to get clean. Nobody knew what to say. Then Ian typed one more time. I can cry after. That broke Linda. She walked to him and dropped beside the bed. Oh baby. Ian looked at her and typed. Don't baby me right now, help Bob. Linda nodded quickly, wiping her face. Okay, I can do that. Bob stood up, still shaken, but he moved into the routine Ian needed. All right, Bob said, his voice soft, we'll get you cleaned up. Fran and Jen stepped back toward the doorway. Ian typed without looking at them. Stay close. Fran nodded. We're right here. Jen wiped her eyes. Not leaving. Bob gathered the supplies while Linda stayed beside Ian, holding his hand until Bob was ready. The room stayed quiet, but it was not the same quiet as before. This time, nobody hid the truth. Nobody pretended Rod and Ray were coming back. Bob helped Ian carefully, keeping every movement gentle and respectful. Linda followed his lead, nervous at first but determined. Ian stared at the ceiling. For a few minutes he said nothing. Then his tablet spoke. 3 months. Bob paused. Yes. Ian's jaw tightened. And I asked for him. Bob closed his eyes. Yeah. Ian blinked hard. How many times? Bob looked like he did not want to answer. Ian turned his head toward him. How many times, Bob? Bob's voice cracked. A lot. Ian nodded once. Linda started crying again, but she tried to stay useful, handing Bob what he needed. Ian typed. That is embarrassing. Bob shook his head immediately. No, it's not. Ian typed faster, angry now. I was waiting for him like a dog. Linda flinched. No, Ian. Bob leaned closer. You were waiting for your husband, that is not embarrassing. Ian's eyes flashed. He was not waiting for me. Bob's voice went quiet. No, he was. That honesty hit harder than comfort. Ian swallowed and looked away. Bob finished helping him into a clean diaper and fresh clothes. Linda pulled the blanket back over him, then brushed his hair away from his face. Ian did not pull away. Fran came back into the room slowly. Ian typed before she could finish. Don't say sorry. Fran stopped. Ian typed again. I can't hear sorry all day. Jen nodded, crying silently. What do you want us to say? Ian stared at the tablet for a long moment. Then he typed. Say he was wrong. Bob answered first. He was wrong. Linda grabbed Ian's hand. He was wrong. Fran stepped closer. He was wrong and he is a coward. Jen nodded. He was wrong, Ian. Ian closed his eyes. His lips trembled. The tablet spoke again. Say Ray was wrong too. Bob's face fell. Ray was wrong too. Fran's voice shook with anger. He should have stayed, he should have protected you. Ian opened his eyes and typed. I thought Ray loved me. Linda squeezed his hand. Maybe he did in his own way, she whispered, but love that leaves you like that is not enough. Ian stared at her. Then he typed. I hate them. Nobody corrected him. Nobody told him not to. Nobody told him hate was ugly or wrong or too much. Bob simply sat beside him and said, You're allowed. Ian's face crumbled then. The wall he had built that morning finally cracked. He covered his face with one hand and sobbed. Bob moved in immediately, holding him carefully. Linda held his other hand. Fran and Jen came closer, surrounding him. Ian cried into the morning, clean now, dressed now, but still shattered by the truth. The tablet sat on his lap, silent for once. He did not need it to explain the sound coming out of him. Everyone understood. Rod had left. Ray had left. And Ian had been waiting for 3 months for people who were already gone. When he finally reached for the tablet again, his fingers shook. I don't want them back. Bob looked at him. Okay. Ian typed. But I wanted them to choose me. Linda leaned her forehead against his hand. I know. Ian looked around the room. His mother. His sisters. Bob. The people still there. He typed one last thing before exhaustion took over again. Please choose me today. Bob's voice broke. Every day, Ian. Linda nodded through her tears. Every day. Fran wiped her face. Every damn day. Jen leaned down and kissed his forehead. You're chosen. Ian closed his eyes, still crying but not alone. And that morning the truth finally came out. It hurt like hell. But it also made one thing clear. Rod and Ray were gone. Bob, Linda, Fran, and Jen were not. Ian stared at the ceiling for a long moment, his eyes red and empty from crying. Then his fingers moved across the tablet again. The tablet spoke. Arad, my father, Arad, my husband, and both left. The room went still. Linda's hand tightened around his. Fran looked down, trying to control her anger. Jen's eyes filled again. Bob closed his eyes for a second, like the words hit him straight in the chest. Ian looked at all of them, then suddenly let out a broken laugh. It was not a happy laugh. It was sharp, painful, and full of disbelief. 2 rods, the tablet said after he typed again, both gone. Then the laugh turned into a cough. At first it was small. Then it got deeper. Ian's face changed fast. Bob noticed immediately. Ian, Bob said. Ian tried to breathe in, but the cough caught again. His chest tightened. A wet sound rose in his throat and his eyes widened with panic. Linda stood up fast. What's happening? Bob moved without hesitation. Phlegm, he said, he's got phlegm coming up. Ian coughed harder, and this time the sound was thick in his mouth. Bob reached for the suction machine beside the bed and flipped it on. The machine hummed to life. Linda, move back just a little, Bob said, calm but firm. Fran, get the tissues. Jen, keep his tablet close. Everyone moved at once. Ian's eyes locked onto Bob's. Bob leaned close. I got you, Ian, breathe as best you can, don't fight it. Ian coughed again, weaker this time, and Bob carefully used the suction to clear the phlegm from Ian's mouth. Linda covered her mouth, terrified, but she did not run. Fran came back with tissues, her face pale. Jen stood by Ian's tablet, crying quietly. Bob worked slowly and carefully, keeping one hand near Ian's shoulder. That's it, Bob said. Good, let it come up, I got it. Ian's breathing rattled for another second before Bob cleared more of it. The sound eased. Ian shut his eyes, exhausted. Bob turned the suction off only after he was sure Ian's mouth was clear. The room went quiet except for Ian's rough breathing. Linda whispered, "Oh my God." Bob wiped Ian's mouth gently. You're okay, Bob said softly, scary but you're okay. Ian opened his eyes slowly. His hand shook as he reached for the tablet. Jen moved it closer. Ian typed with weak fingers. That was embarrassing. Bob's face tightened with pain. No, he said immediately, that was medical, not embarrassing. Ian typed. I hate this body. Linda leaned closer, tears running down her face. I know you do. Ian looked at Bob. The tablet spoke again. I was laughing, then I choked. Bob nodded. Your body is tired. Laughing, crying, coughing, all of it takes energy now. That doesn't mean you can't laugh, it just means we have to be ready. Ian stared at him. Then he typed. You are always ready. Bob swallowed hard. I try to be. Ian's eyes filled again. The tablet spoke. Rod was not. Nobody answered right away. Then Bob said no, he was. Linda sat back down beside Ian and took his hand again. But Bob was, she said, and we are learning. Fran nodded. We're learning fast. Jen wiped her face. And we're not leaving because it gets scary. Ian looked at each of them. His face crumbled, but this time he did not sob hard, he was too tired. He typed slowly. I hate that you saw that. Bob leaned closer. Ian, I've seen scary things, I've seen sad things, I've seen unfair things, but I have never looked at you and felt disgusted. Ian blinked. Bob's voice broke, but he kept going. Not once. Linda squeezed Ian's hand. Me either. Fran stepped forward. Never. Jen shook her head. Never, Ian. Ian closed his eyes. His breathing was still rough but calmer now. After a minute he typed again. Can I rest now? Bob nodded and pulled the blanket gently over him. Yeah, buddy, you can rest. Ian typed one more thing. Keep machine close. Bob placed the suction machine back beside the bed, close enough to reach fast. It's right here, he said. I'm right here too. Ian looked at him. The tablet spoke in a tired voice. Don't let me choke alone. Bob's eyes filled. I won't. Linda leaned down and kissed Ian's forehead. None of us will. Fran and Jen stayed near the doorway, shaken but still there. Ian closed his eyes again. The morning had already taken too much from him. The truth about Rod. The truth about Ray. The fear in his own body. But when the room settled, one truth stayed louder than all the others. Ian had choked. Bob had moved. His family had stayed. And nobody ran. Ian rested for a few minutes, but his eyes did not stay closed. Bob could tell his mind was still moving. The suction machine sat close to the bed now. Linda kept one hand on Ian's arm. Fran and Jen stayed nearby, quieter than before, shaken by how fast Ian's coughing had turned scary. Ian reached for his tablet again. His fingers moved slowly. Bob, why didn't you tell me? Bob looked down. Linda's eyes moved to him. Fran and Jen went still. Ian typed again. You should not have been doing this alone. Bob swallowed hard. Ian. The tablet spoke before Bob could answer. This is not an ABDL thing. Bob's face tightened. Ian looked straight at him. The tablet continued. This is ALS, this is medical, this is my life, you should not be alone with it. Bob rubbed his hands over his face. For 3 months he had carried everything, the diapers, the suction machine, the fear, the late nights, the crying, the questions about Rod, the lies he told to keep Ian from breaking. Now Ian was looking at him like he was the one who had been hurt. Bob's voice came out quiet. You're right. Ian blinked. Bob nodded, tears in his eyes. You're right, Ian, I should have told someone. I thought I was protecting you. I thought if I kept everything normal, you wouldn't feel abandoned. Ian typed back. I felt abandoned anyway. Bob closed his eyes. I know. Linda let out a soft sob. Bob opened his eyes and looked at Ian. You were having issues with your dad, you were already hurting because of him. Then Rod left and Ray left with him, and I thought if I told you it would destroy whatever little piece you had left. Ian typed. So you let it destroy you instead. Bob had no answer. That silence was the answer. Ian's face softened even through his exhaustion. The tablet spoke again. Bob, I need help, but you need help too. Bob looked away fast, but Ian did not let him hide. Ian typed. Look at me. Bob looked back at him. Ian's fingers shook, but he kept going. I am not mad that you stayed. I am mad that you thought staying meant suffering alone. Bob's tears finally fell. I didn't know what else to do, he admitted. Every night I kept thinking Rod would come back, then after a week I thought maybe Ray would call, then after a month I stopped expecting them and just kept going. Ian's eyes watered. Bob continued. You needed changes, you needed help eating, you needed help coughing, you needed someone to sit with you when you cried. I couldn't leave you. Ian typed. I did not ask you to leave. Bob nodded. No, but I was scared if I called your family, you would think I was handing you off. Ian's expression broke a little. The tablet spoke. I would have thought that. Bob nodded again. I know. Ian looked down. For a moment the room stayed quiet. Then Linda moved closer. Ian, she said softly, you are right, Bob should not have been alone and neither should you. Ian looked at her. Linda wiped her face. I know I came back late, I know that, but I am here now. If you let me, I want to learn everything. The medical stuff, the care routine, the machine, the transfers, the nights, all of it. Fran stepped forward. Me too. Jen nodded quickly. Me too, I don't care how scary it gets. Ian typed slowly. You all say that now. Fran's face twisted with pain. I know why you don't trust it. Jen stepped closer. But let us prove it. Bob sat beside Ian and took a breath. No more secrets, he said. Not about your care, not about who leaves, not about what's getting worse. I can still help you, but I won't be the only one carrying it. Ian stared at him for a long moment. Then he typed. You promise? Bob answered right away. I promise. Ian typed again. If I get worse, you tell them. Bob nodded. Yes. If you get tired, you tell them. Yes. If you're scared, you tell me. Bob hesitated. Ian's eyes sharpened. The tablet repeated. If you're scared, you tell me. Bob's voice cracked. Yes. Ian looked satisfied but sad. Then he typed. I am scared too. Linda squeezed his hand. We know, baby. Ian shook his head and typed again. No, I mean I am scared I will become too much. Bob leaned forward. You are not too much. Ian's tablet spoke immediately. You do not know that. Bob paused. Then he answered honestly. You may need a lot more than any one person can handle alone, but needing a lot is not the same as being too much. That landed in the room. Linda nodded through her tears. You are not a burden because your needs changed. Fran added, and we are not going to make Bob prove his love by breaking himself. Jen wiped her face and tried to smile. We can make a schedule, we can learn, we can mess up and learn again. Ian looked at her. The tablet spoke. You will mess up. Jen gave a shaky laugh. Probably. Ian's mouth twitched just a little. Then he coughed once. Everyone tensed. Bob reached for the suction machine, but Ian lifted one weak hand. He breathed slowly. The cough passed. Bob kept his hand near the machine anyway. Ian noticed. He typed. See that is why you need help. Bob nodded. You're right. Ian leaned back against the pillow, exhausted again. The tablet spoke one last time before he rested. I forgive you for not telling me, but do not protect me with lies anymore. Bob bowed his head. I won't. Linda looked at Ian, then at Bob, then at Fran and Jen. Today we start over, she said, not perfect, not fixed, just honest. Ian closed his eyes. His fingers rested on the tablet. A few seconds later, the tablet spoke one final message. Honest is better. Bob sat beside him. Linda stayed by his hand. Fran and Jen stayed close. And for the first time in 3 months, Bob did not feel like the only person holding the whole house together. The house was finally starting to breathe again. Ian was resting in bed, the suction machine close by, his tablet on his lap. Bob sat beside him, Linda was near his hand, and Fran and Jen were talking quietly about making a care schedule. Then the front door opened. Everyone froze. Footsteps came into the hall. Bob stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. Ray stepped into view. His clothes were wrinkled, his face looked tired, his eyes went straight to Ian. Ray, Linda said, stunned. Bob's face hardened. Get out. Ray stopped. Bobby. Bob stepped between Ray and Ian's room. I said get out. Ian's eyes locked on Ray, his hand moved slowly to his tablet. Ray lifted both hands. Bob, we were kidnapped. The room went dead silent. Fran blinked. Jen stared at him like he had lost his mind. Ian typed. The tablet spoke flatly. Even a guy with ALS does not believe that. Ray's face twisted. Ian, I swear. Ian typed again. Do not swear at me. Ray swallowed. Bob's jaw clenched. You expect us to believe you and Rod were kidnapped for 3 months, and somehow you just walked through the front door. Ray looked around the room. It wasn't like that. Fran stepped forward. Then what was it like, Ray? Ray looked at Ian again. Where Rod? Bob's voice went cold. You tell us. Ray's eyes widened. Rod never came back. Bob gave a bitter laugh. No, Rod never came back, you never came back. Ray shook his head. No, that's not. Bob cut him off. I was doing Ian's care. I sat with him when he was scared, I took him to the doctors, I held him when he cried, I handled the suction machine when he choked. I changed him, cleaned him, fed him, watched him, slept in chairs, lied to his face because I thought the truth would kill him. Ray's face went pale. I didn't know. Bob stepped closer. You didn't call. Ray looked down. I couldn't. Bob's voice rose. For 3 months. Ray snapped his head up. Why didn't you do that before we left, huh? Bob froze. Ian's eyes narrowed. Ray pointed at him, not with hate but with desperate anger. You want to stand there like you're the hero now? Where was all that before? Where was all that when Rod was falling apart? Where was all that when Ian needed more than one person and Rod was drowning? Bob's face changed. Linda stood. Ray, don't you put this on Bob. Ray's voice shook. I'm not putting it all on him, but don't act like Bob suddenly became the only one who cared. Rod was breaking too. Ian typed hard. The tablet spoke. So he left me to break alone. Ray turned to him. Ian, I didn't want to leave you. Ian typed. But you did. Ray's mouth opened but nothing came out. Ian kept typing. You left with my husband, you left me with Bob, you let me ask for Rod. Ray's eyes filled. I thought Rod was coming back. Ian typed. You thought wrong. Bob pointed toward the door. Leave. Ray shook his head. No, not until I explain. Fran stepped in. Then explain fast before I throw you out myself. Ray looked from Fran to Jen to Linda, then finally back to Ian. Rod panicked that night, Ray said. He kept saying he couldn't watch Ian die. He kept saying every change, every cough, every doctor visit was killing him. I told him to calm down. I told him to go outside, breathe, then come back in. Bob's face twisted. And instead, Ray swallowed. He got in the car. Linda whispered, and you went with him. Ray nodded, ashamed. I thought if I stayed with him for one night, I could talk him into coming back. He was driving like he wasn't thinking. He kept saying he couldn't be Ian's husband and caregiver anymore. He said he couldn't look at Ian in bed and not see what ALS was taking. Ian's eyes filled, but he did not look away. The tablet spoke. So he chose not to look. Ray closed his eyes. Yes. The honesty hit the room hard. Ray opened his eyes again. I stayed because I thought I could fix him, then one night became two. Then Rod started blocking calls, changing hotels, turning off his phone. He told me if I went back, I was choosing Ian over him. Bob stared at him. And you still stayed. Ray's voice broke. Yes. Ian typed. Then you were not kidnapped, you were weak. Ray flinched like Ian had slapped him. Linda covered her mouth, but she did not correct Ian. Ray nodded slowly. You're right. Ian's eyes filled with tears. The tablet spoke again. You let Bob carry me. Ray looked at Bob, shame all over his face. I know. Bob's voice was low. No, Ray, you don't know. You don't know what it was like when he would wake up scared and ask if Rod was back. You don't know what it was like when he had to go to the doctor and I had to pretend we were enough. You don't know what it was like when he cried because his body scared him and the one person who promised forever had disappeared. Ray wiped his face. I'm sorry. Ian typed immediately. I can't hear sorry all day. Ray nodded. Okay. Ian typed. Where is Rod? Ray looked down. Nobody moved. Bob stepped closer. Ray, where is he? Ray's voice dropped. I don't know. Fran snapped, what do you mean you don't know? Ray looked up, panicked. He left me too. Silence. Jen whispered, what? Ray laughed once, but it was broken. 2 weeks ago, I woke up and he was gone, his phone was off, his bags were gone, the car was gone, he left a note that said he couldn't do any of it anymore. Ian stared at him. His fingers moved slowly. The tablet spoke. So Rod left both of us. Ray nodded, crying now. Yes. Ian's face stayed still, but his eyes were full of pain. The tablet spoke again. Good, now you know how it feels. Ray covered his mouth and looked away. Bob looked at Ian, worried the anger would turn into another coughing fit. Ian breathed slow. Ian took a rough breath. Bob reached toward the suction machine, ready just in case. Ian typed. I am okay. Bob did not move his hand away from the machine. Ray noticed. What happened? Bob looked at him coldly. He choked on phlegm this morning after laughing about how both rods left him. Ray's face crumbled. Ian. Ian typed. Do not say my name like you stayed. Ray stepped back. Linda moved beside Ian. You need to leave, Ray. Ray looked at her. Linda, please, I came back. Linda's voice shook, but she stayed firm. You came back after being left. That is not the same as choosing Ian. Ray looked like he wanted to argue, but he could not. Fran crossed her arms. You don't get to walk in here and rewrite the story. Jen nodded. If you want to make anything right, start with the truth. Ray looked at Ian. I was not kidnapped, he said quietly. I stayed with Rod because I thought I could save him, and I abandoned you. I was wrong. Ian stared at him. For a long time he did not type. Then his fingers moved. Thank you for telling the truth. Ray let out a shaky breath. Ian typed again. Now get out. Ray froze. Bob stepped toward him. You heard him. Ray looked at Ian one last time. I still love you. Ian's eyes hardened. The tablet spoke. Love that leaves is not enough. Ray nodded, crying silently. Then he turned and walked back toward the front door. But before he stepped out, Ray stopped with his hand on the door. For a second, nobody thought he was going to speak again. Then he turned back around, his face wet with tears. Rod is my brother, Ray said. I was trying to keep him from looking like the bad guy, bro. Bob's face changed completely. The little bit of patience he had left disappeared. Your family did enough to him, Bob said, pointing toward Ian's room. Now get off his land. Ray froze. Bobby. No, Bob snapped. You do not get to stand in Ian's house and talk about protecting Rod's image. Ian was in that bed asking why his husband wasn't coming home. Ian was scared of his own body. Ian was choking on phlegm. Ian was crying because his father denied him and his husband disappeared. Ray looked down. Bob stepped closer. And you were worried about Rod not looking bad. Linda came into the hallway behind Bob. Leave Ray, she said coldly. Ray looked at her. I know I messed up. Fran pushed past Jen and stood beside Bob. Messed up, Fran said. You helped abandon a sick man, lied about it, came back with a kidnapping story, and now you're still defending Rod. Ray's voice broke. He's my brother. Ian's tablet suddenly spoke from the bedroom. And I was his husband. Everyone went silent. Bob turned around. Ian was awake, his eyes locked on the doorway. His hand rested on the tablet, shaking, but his face was clear. Ray's mouth opened. Ian. Ian typed again. The tablet spoke. You protected Rod from looking bad. Who protected me from feeling worthless? Ray's face crumbled. Nobody answered because there was no answer. Ian typed again. Bob did. Bob's eyes filled. Ian kept going. Bob protected me when you protected Rod. Ray took a step toward the bedroom, but Bob blocked him immediately. Don't. Ray stopped. Ian's tablet spoke again. My father left, my husband left, you left. Do not tell me about family. Ray wiped his face. I was wrong. Ian stared at him. The tablet answered. Yes. Ray nodded, crying harder. I thought if I stayed with Rod, I could bring him back. Ian typed. You brought yourself back after he left you. Ray flinched. Ian's fingers moved slower now, but he did not stop. You did not come back for me first. You came back after Rod did to you what he did to me. Linda covered her mouth. Fran whispered, damn. Ray lowered his head. You're right. Bob pointed again toward the door. Then respect him enough to leave when he tells you to leave. Ray looked at Ian one last time. I don't want to lose you too. Ian's face tightened. The tablet spoke. You already did for 3 months. Ray shut his eyes. Ian typed again. If you want to make it right, stop defending Rod. Ray opened his eyes. I don't know how. Ian's expression broke, but his voice through the tablet stayed firm. Then learn away from me. Bob stepped forward. You heard him, get off his land. Ray looked at Bob, then at Linda, Fran, and Jen. Nobody moved to stop Bob. Nobody asked Ray to stay. Ray finally nodded. Okay, he whispered. He opened the door. Before he stepped out, Ian typed one more time. The tablet's voice carried through the hall. Ray. Ray stopped. Ian stared at him. Tell Rod I do not need him to look bad, he did that himself. Ray's shoulders dropped. Then he walked out. Bob followed him to the porch and stood there until Ray was off the property. Ray looked back once from the driveway, but Bob did not wave, did not soften, and did not move. Only when Ray was gone did Bob shut and lock the door. When Bob came back to Ian's room, Ian looked exhausted. Bob sat beside him. You okay? Ian typed. No. Bob nodded. Yeah, I know. Ian typed again. Thank you for saying get off my land. Bob let out a small sad laugh. You liked that? Ian's mouth twitched weakly. The tablet spoke. A little. Linda wiped her tears. Fran crossed her arms and looked toward the door. He better not come back today. Jen nodded. Not unless he brings the truth and nothing else. Ian looked at Bob again. The tablet spoke softly. Bob. I'm here. Ian typed. Do I really have land? Bob smiled through his tears. This is your house, buddy, your room, your space, your life, so yeah, today it's your land. Ian closed his eyes. For the first time that morning, his face relaxed just a little. The people who left were still gone. The damage was still there. But Ray had walked out knowing one thing clearly. Ian was not alone anymore. And anyone who came back with excuses would be met at the door. Ian kept staring at the locked front door like Ray's shadow was still standing there. His fingers moved over the tablet again, harder this time. The tablet spoke. I am fucking dying, I don't need that. Nobody corrected his language. Nobody told him to calm down. Nobody told him not to say it. Bob sat beside him and nodded slowly. I know. Ian's jaw shook. The tablet spoke again. I do not need excuses, I do not need Rod looking good, I do not need Ray crying at my door because Rod left him too. Bob's eyes stayed on him. I know, he said again. Ian typed faster, anger pushing through the weakness in his hands. I need people who can handle the truth, I need people who can suction me when I choke, I need people who can change me without making me feel gross, I need doctors, I need sleep, I need no lies. Linda's face broke, but she forced herself to listen. Fran stood near the wall, her hands clenched. Jen wiped her face, nodding through tears. Ian's tablet kept speaking. I do not have time to make grown men feel better about leaving me. Bob leaned forward. You're right. Ian looked at him, breathing rougher now. Bob kept his voice soft. You are right, Ian, you don't need that, you don't need to carry Rod, you don't need to carry Ray, you don't need to carry anyone's guilt. Ian blinked hard. The tablet spoke. I am tired. Linda moved closer. I know, baby. Ian shook his head and typed again. Not sleepy tired, soul tired. That silenced the room. Bob's face tightened. I know, he whispered. Ian looked down at his hands. I keep losing people before I am even gone. Linda covered her mouth. Fran turned away, crying silently. Jen whispered, Ian. Ian typed again. Dad left because I am gay, Rod left because I am sick, Ray left because Rod is his brother, what am I supposed to do with that? Bob took a slow breath. Nothing. Ian looked at him. Bob's voice stayed steady, even though his eyes were wet. You do nothing with it, you don't fix it, you don't explain it, you don't make it nicer, you let it be what it is, they failed you. Ian's lip trembled. The tablet spoke. They failed me. Bob nodded. Yes. Ian looked at Linda. She stepped closer, crying openly now. They failed you, Linda said, and I failed you before too, but I am here now and I am not going to ask you to make my guilt smaller. Ian stared at her. Linda wiped her face. You don't have to comfort me, you don't have to forgive me again today, you don't have to be strong so I can survive what I did wrong. Ian's eyes filled. Fran stepped forward. And you don't have to make Ray feel better. Jen nodded. You don't have to make Rod look human. Bob reached for Ian's hand. You get to be the sick one today. Ian let out a broken breath. The tablet spoke softly. I hate being the sick one. Bob squeezed his hand. I know. Ian closed his eyes, but tears still leaked down his face. I wanted to be someone's husband. Bob's voice cracked. You were. Ian shook his head and typed. I wanted to stay someone's husband. Linda bent her head. Fran pressed her fist to her mouth. Jen looked at the floor. Bob did not rush to answer, he just sat with the pain of it. Then he said, you still deserved that. Ian opened his eyes. Bob leaned closer. You deserved a husband who stayed, you deserved a father who loved you, you deserved a family that showed up before the emergency. Ian looked at him. Bob's voice broke. And now you deserve peace, as much of it as we can give you. Ian stared down at the tablet. His fingers moved slower. I do not want Ray back today. Bob nodded. Then he does not come back today. I do not want Rod here. He won't be here. I do not want cops. Bob's jaw tightened. No cops unless you need protection. Ian typed. I want quiet. Linda nodded quickly. We can do quiet. Fran wiped her cheeks. I'll make sure nobody comes to the door. Jen added, I'll turn phones down, no drama. Ian looked at Bob. The tablet spoke. I want clean sheets later. Bob nodded. Done. I want the suction close. It's right here. I want my tablet charged. Jen picked up the charger. I got it. Ian's breathing started to settle. Then he typed one more thing. I want everyone to stop looking at me like I am already dead. The room froze. Linda's eyes widened. Bob swallowed. Ian looked from one face to another. The tablet spoke again. I am dying, I know, but I am still here. Linda nodded, crying harder but standing straighter. You're right. Fran wiped her face and forced herself to look at him, not through him. You're here. Jen nodded. You're still here. Bob leaned in and brushed a tear from Ian's cheek. You are still here, Ian. Ian closed his eyes. For the first time since Ray walked in, his shoulders loosened slightly. The house became quiet again, but this time it was the kind of quiet Ian had asked for. No excuses. No lies. No men at the door trying to explain why they left. Just clean air, the soft hum of the suction machine nearby, and the people who had finally understood what Ian needed most. Not a miracle. Not a speech. Not another apology. Just peace. Linda stepped outside to get air. The house had gone quiet the way Ian asked, but her chest still felt tight. She stood on the porch, wiping her face, trying to breathe without falling apart. Then she saw the police car pull up. Her body went cold. No, she whispered, not again. An officer stepped out, but this time he did not look annoyed or impatient. He looked serious. Linda walked down one step. Officer, please, she said. My son cannot handle more drama today. The cop lifted his hand gently. Ma'am, we are not here because of a complaint this time. Linda froze. What do you mean? The officer checked his notes. Your son is married to a man named Rod Matthew, correct? Linda swallowed. Yes. And Rod Matthew is the one who disappeared 3 months ago. Linda's face tightened. Yes, him and his brother Ray. Ray came back today with some story about them being kidnapped, but Ray lies. He came back because Rod left him too. The officer's expression did not change. Can we meet your son? We need to talk with him. Linda immediately shook her head. He has ALS, he has had enough today. I understand, the officer said, but this is important. Bob appeared in the doorway behind Linda. What's going on? Linda looked back at him. They want to talk to Ian. Bob stepped onto the porch. About what? The officer looked at him. About Rod Matthews' disappearance. Bob's jaw clenched. He abandoned Ian. The officer said nothing for a second. Then he said, Ray may not be lying about everything. Bob went still. Linda turned pale. What? Inside, Ian's tablet suddenly spoke from the bedroom. Let them in. Bob turned fast. Ian. The tablet spoke again louder. Let them in. Linda looked at Bob, terrified. Bob hesitated, then stepped aside. The officer entered slowly, careful not to make the room feel crowded. Ian was sitting up in bed, tired and pale, with the suction machine still close beside him. Fran and Jen stood nearby, both tense. The officer stopped a respectful distance away. Ian. Ian looked at him and typed. The tablet spoke. Yes. The officer nodded. My name is Officer Harris. I know you have had a difficult morning and I am sorry to bring this to you now. But we need to ask you some questions about your husband. I know you have had a difficult morning and I am sorry to bring this to you now. But we need to ask you some questions about your husband, Rod Matthew. Ian stared at him. His fingers moved. After I got ALS, he disappeared. His brother said they were both kidnapped, but Ray lies. Officer Harris nodded slowly. I understand why you would think that. Ian typed again. Because it sounds stupid. Fran muttered, it does. Jen whispered, Fran. The officer looked at Ian carefully. Ray may not be lying about this. The room went silent. Bob's face hardened. What does that mean? Officer Harris looked at him, then back to Ian. It means we have reason to believe Rod Matthew may have been involved with people who were threatening him before he left. Linda grabbed the back of a chair. Threatening him. Ian's face did not move. The tablet spoke. Threatened him into leaving his sick husband. The officer took a breath. We do not know everything yet. Ian typed. Convenient. Bob stepped closer to Ian's bed. Officer, you need to be clear. Are you saying Rod was kidnapped, or are you saying Ray is using this to cover for him? Officer Harris answered carefully. We are saying Ray's report matches parts of an open investigation. Fran's anger faded into confusion. What investigation? The officer looked around the room. A vehicle connected to Rod Matthew was found abandoned 2 counties over. There were signs of a struggle. Linda covered her mouth. Jen whispered, oh my God. Ian blinked once, but his face stayed guarded. He typed. When? Officer Harris looked at his notes. 2 weeks ago. Ray's words came back to everyone. 2 weeks ago, I woke up and he was gone. Bob's eyes narrowed. So Ray was gone for 3 months with him, but Rod only disappeared 2 weeks ago. That is what we are trying to understand, the officer said. Ian typed. So Ray still left me for 3 months. Officer Harris nodded. Yes, that part is not erased. Ian looked at him for a long moment. Then the tablet spoke. Good, because I am not doing the poor Rod show today. Linda flinched, but she did not correct him. Bob said quietly, you don't have to. The officer softened his voice. Ian, nobody is asking you to forgive him or defend him. We are trying to find out what happened. Ian's fingers rested on the tablet. For a second, his anger cracked, and something more painful showed underneath. He typed slowly. Is he alive? The whole room stopped breathing. Officer Harris did not answer right away. That was answer enough to scare everyone. We do not know, he said finally. Linda started crying. Jen sat down hard in the chair. Fran whispered, damn it. Ian stared at the officer. The tablet spoke quieter now. I hate him. Officer Harris nodded. That is understandable. Ian typed again. I still need to know if he is dead. Bob's eyes filled, but he stayed beside Ian. Officer Harris stepped a little closer. That is why we came. Ray told us Rod may have contacted someone here before he vanished. Did Rod call, text, email, leave a message, send anything to you, Bob, Linda, Fran, or Jen? Everyone looked at each other. Bob shook his head. No, nothing. Linda said Rod's father called the cops on Ian, but that was Rod Desith, Ian's father, not Rod Matthew. The officer nodded, writing that down. 2 different Rods. Ian gave a bitter little laugh, then coughed once. Bob's hand went straight to the suction machine. Ian lifted one weak hand. The cough passed. The tablet spoke. Yes, lucky me. Officer Harris looked down, then back at Ian. I am sorry. Ian typed. I can't hear sorry all day. The officer nodded. Then I will say this plainly, your husband may have abandoned you for 3 months. He may also now be in danger. Both can be true. That hit Ian harder than anything else. His eyes filled, but he did not cry yet. The tablet spoke. I do not know what I am supposed to feel. Bob sat beside him. You don't have to pick one feeling. Ian looked at him. Bob's voice stayed low. You can be angry he left, you can hate what he did, you can still be scared that something happened to him. Ian looked back at Officer Harris. He typed. If Ray comes back, I do not want him in my room. Officer Harris nodded. That is your choice. If Rod is alive, I do not want him walking in here like nothing happened. That is also your choice. Ian typed slower now. But if you find out he is dead, tell me. Linda cried harder. Bob closed his eyes. Officer Harris nodded respectfully. We will. Ian leaned back against the pillow, exhausted again. The tablet spoke one more time. I am dying, I do not have energy for lies, bring truth or do not come back. Officer Harris closed his notebook. I understand. He gave Bob his card. Call me if anyone remembers anything. Any old message, strange call, unknown car, anything from around the night Rod and Ray left. Bob took the card. I will. The officer looked at Ian one last time. We will try to find the truth. Ian's eyes stayed on him. The tablet spoke softly. Good, I am tired of everyone hiding behind stories. Officer Harris left after that. Linda walked him out, but Bob stayed with Ian. Fran and Jen stood frozen, still trying to process the new truth. Rod Matthew had left. Ray had lied. But maybe not about everything. Ian stared at the ceiling, his breathing rough and uneven. Bob moved closer. You okay? Ian typed without looking at him. No. Bob nodded. Honest answer. Ian's fingers moved again. I wanted him punished for leaving. Bob waited. The tablet spoke quieter. I did not want him missing. Linda came back into the room and heard the last line. Her face broke. She sat beside Ian and took his hand. Nobody knew what to say. So they gave Ian what he had asked for. No lies. No excuses. No pretending. Just the awful truth sitting in the room with them. Rod was gone. But now, nobody knew if he had walked away forever or if something worse had happened after he did. Ian stared at the officer's card in Bob's hand. His face was pale, his breathing was rough. Everything about him looked like he was trying to stay in the room while his mind wanted to run. His fingers moved across the tablet. Ray always lies. Everyone looked at him. The tablet continued. But this is true. Bob's face tightened. Ian shook his head and kept typing. Even Rod told me not to trust his brother. Linda's eyes widened. Rod told you that. Ian nodded weakly. The tablet spoke again. He said Ray lies when he is scared, he lies to protect himself, he lies to protect family, but he does not lie good when someone is really gone. The room went quiet. Officer Harris looked at Ian carefully. Did Rod ever tell you why he didn't trust Ray? Ian's fingers hovered over the tablet, but then stopped. His eyes squeezed shut. Bob noticed the change immediately. Ian, Bob said softly. Ian's breathing started to shake. He typed slower now. Bob, I can't right now. Bob moved closer. Okay, then we stop. Officer Harris opened his mouth like he wanted to ask one more question, but Bob looked at him hard. No, Bob said, he said he can't. Ian typed again, his hand trembling badly. Officer, I am done, sorry, but I can't right now. The tablet voice sounded too calm for the pain on Ian's face. Officer Harris closed his notebook immediately. That's okay, Ian, we're done for now. Ian swallowed hard, looking ashamed even though he had done nothing wrong. The tablet spoke again. I am not trying to be rude. Officer Harris shook his head. You're not being rude, you answered what you could, that is enough. Bob sat on the edge of the bed beside Ian and placed a steady hand near his arm. You hear that? Bob said, enough. Ian's eyes filled. I feel bad. Linda stepped closer. Don't. Ian typed. If Rod is missing, I should help. Fran's voice softened. You did help. Jen nodded quickly. You told them Ray might be telling the truth, that matters. Officer Harris looked at Ian. They're right, what you said helps, and anything else can wait. Ian's face twisted. The tablet spoke. I hate him, but I do not want him hurt. Bob nodded. Both can be true. Ian looked at Bob like that sentence was the only thing holding him together. Then his breath caught. Bob's hand went near the suction machine right away, but Ian only coughed once. It was rough, but it passed. Still, Bob stayed ready. Officer Harris noticed and took a step back toward the door. I'm going to leave now, he said. You rest, Bob has my card, you can call when or if you're ready. Ian typed one last message. If you find Rod, do not bring him here without asking me. Officer Harris nodded. I won't. Ian typed. And do not let Ray in here. I understand. Linda walked the officer toward the door. Fran stayed planted near Ian's room like a guard. Jen sat beside Ian's tablet charger, wiping her face. When the front door finally closed, the house exhaled. Ian looked at Bob. His fingers moved again. I can't do more today. Bob leaned closer. Then you don't. Ian typed. No Ray, no cops, no Rod talk. Bob nodded. No Ray, no cops, no Rod talk. Linda came back into the room, her face wet but calm. I'll make sure the door stays locked. Fran crossed her arms. I'll sit by the window if I have to. Jen tried to give Ian a small smile. And I'll keep your tablet charged. Ian looked at all of them. Then he typed one more thing. I want to be clean, safe, and left alone by drama. Bob's face softened. That we can do. Ian closed his eyes, exhausted beyond words. Bob adjusted the blanket, checked the suction machine, and made sure Ian's tablet was close enough for him to reach without straining. Linda sat quietly at his side. Fran watched the door. Jen dimmed the light. For the first time that day, nobody asked Ian to be strong. Nobody asked him to explain Ray. Nobody asked him to forgive Rod. Nobody asked him to carry another grown man's disaster. Ian had given the truth he had. Now the truth would have to wait while he rested. Linda went into the living room after the officer left, trying to keep herself busy. Ian had asked for no more drama. No Ray. No cops. No Rod talk. So Linda turned the TV on low, hoping the normal noise would keep the house from feeling so heavy. Then the breaking news banner flashed across the screen. Linda froze. The reporter stood outside a taped-off street, police lights flashing behind her. We are following a developing story tonight. A man identified as Rod Matthew was reportedly shot by another man, Rod Desith. Police say the two men may have known each other through a family connection. Rod Matthew was transported to the hospital and his condition has not yet been released. Linda's whole body went cold. The remote slipped from her hand and hit the floor. No, she whispered. The reporter kept talking, but Linda barely heard the rest. Rod Matthew. Shot by Rod Desith. Her ex-husband. Ian's husband. Linda screamed. Bob, get your ass in here now. Bob came running from Ian's room, panic already on his face. What happened? Linda pointed at the TV, shaking so hard she could barely speak. Bob looked at the screen. The reporter repeated the names. Rod Matthew was shot by Rod Desith. Bob's face went white. Linda started sobbing. My ex-husband Rod killed Ian's husband Rod. Bob stared at the TV. Shit. Linda covered her mouth, trying to muffle the sound of her crying so Ian would not hear. But it was too late. From down the hall, Ian's tablet spoke. Bob. Bob shut his eyes. Linda whispered no. Ian's tablet spoke again, louder. Bob, what happened? Bob looked at Linda. Neither of them moved. Then Ian typed again. Do not lie to me. That sentence cut through the whole house. Bob turned the TV off, then walked slowly back toward Ian's room. Linda followed behind him, crying silently. Fran and Jen came out of the kitchen, confused. What happened? Fran asked. Bob shook his head once. Not here, Ian first. They all went into Ian's room. Ian was watching them, already knowing from their faces that something terrible had happened. His fingers rested on the tablet. Bob sat beside him. Ian, Bob said softly, there was a news report. Ian's face tightened. The tablet spoke. Rod. Bob swallowed. Yes. Ian's eyes moved to Linda. She broke before anyone said the rest. My ex-husband, Linda cried. Your father, Rod Desith, they said he shot Rod Matthew. The room went silent. Ian did not move. Fran's mouth fell open. Jen whispered, oh my God. Ian stared at Linda like the words had not reached him yet. Then his fingers moved. The tablet spoke. My father shot my husband. Nobody answered. There was nothing to soften it. Bob nodded once, tears in his eyes. That is what the report said. Ian blinked. Once. Twice. Then he started typing again. Is he dead? Bob shook his head quickly. They said he was taken to the hospital, they did not say he died. Linda grabbed Ian's hand. I'm sorry, I am so sorry. Ian pulled his hand back. Not hard. Just enough. Linda froze. Ian typed. No sorry, facts. Bob nodded. Facts, the news said Rod Matthew was shot, Rod Desith is involved. Rod Matthew was taken to the hospital, we do not know his condition. Ian looked at Fran. Call Officer Harris. Fran nodded fast. I'll call. She grabbed the card from Bob and stepped into the hall, already dialing. Ian looked back at Bob. The tablet spoke. I said no, Rod, talk. Bob's face crumbled. I know. Ian typed. Both Rods ignored me. Bob leaned forward. I know. Ian's breath started to shake. The tablet spoke again. My dad hated me so much he shot my husband. Linda shook her head, sobbing. I don't know why he did it. Ian's eyes filled with a kind of horror nobody in the room had seen before. The tablet spoke. He said he did not know me. Bob nodded slowly. Ian typed. Then he knew enough to find my husband. That hit Linda so hard she had to sit down. Jen covered her mouth. Bob moved closer. Ian breathed slow. Ian's chest rose and fell too fast. Bob reached toward the suction machine, ready in case the panic turned into coughing again. Ian typed with trembling fingers. I can't breathe. Bob's voice became steady immediately. Eyes on me, slow, in through your nose if you can, out slow, I'm right here. Ian tried. His breath hitched. Linda wanted to touch him again, but she stopped herself. Bob kept his hand close to Ian's shoulder. You're safe in this room, Bob said. Your father is not here, Ray is not here, Rod Matthew is not here, nobody is walking in without your permission. Ian squeezed his eyes shut. The tablet spoke after another shaky burst of typing. I hate him, I hate my father. Fran came back into the room, phone still in her hand. Officer Harris is calling back, I left a message, I said it was urgent. Ian opened his eyes. The tablet spoke. If Rod Matthew dies, do I have to cry? Jen's face broke. No, she whispered, you don't have to do anything. Bob shook his head. You do not owe anyone the right reaction. Ian typed. He left me. Bob nodded. He did. Ian typed again. But he was my husband. Yes. Ian's eyes filled. And my father shot him. Bob's voice cracked. Yes. Ian looked at the ceiling. For a long moment he did not type, he did not cry, he just stared upward like his body had gone somewhere his family could not reach. Then the tablet spoke. I do not know where to put this. Linda sobbed softly. Bob leaned closer. You don't have to put it anywhere tonight. Ian's eyes shifted to him. Bob kept going. You don't have to understand it, you don't have to forgive anyone, you don't have to defend anyone, you don't have to decide if you love Rod Matthew or hate him, you don't have to decide what your father is, you just have to breathe. Ian's fingers moved slowly. I am tired of breathing, hurting. Bob's eyes filled. I know. The phone rang in Fran's hand. Everyone jumped. Fran looked at the screen. It's Officer Harris. Ian looked at Bob. The tablet spoke. Speaker. Fran answered and put it on speaker. Officer Harris. His voice came through, serious and tight. Fran, where is Ian? Bob answered. He's here, he knows about the news. There was a pause. Officer Harris sighed. I'm sorry he found out that way. Ian typed. No sorry, facts. Officer Harris heard the tablet and answered carefully. Okay, facts, Rod Matthew is alive, he is in surgery, Rod Desith is in custody. Linda collapsed into tears. Ian's eyes closed. Bob exhaled hard, like he had been holding his breath since the TV report. Fran asked why did Rod Desith shoot him? Officer Harris said, we are still investigating, I cannot give all details yet, but we believe Rod Desith confronted Rod Matthew about Ian. Ian's eyes opened. The tablet spoke. About me. Officer Harris paused. Yes. Ian stared at the phone. The tablet spoke again. My father did not want me, why would he shoot someone about me? Officer Harris's voice softened. I do not know yet. Ian's face twisted. That is not facts. You're right, Officer Harris said. That part is not facts yet. The facts are this: Rod Matthew is alive and in surgery, Rod Desith is in custody, Ray is being questioned, we will keep you updated. Ian typed. Do not let my father near me. He will not be near you. Do not let Ray in. We understand. Ian's fingers shook. If Rod Matthew wakes up, do not let him come here without asking me. Officer Harris answered, understood. Ian leaned back, drained. The tablet spoke one final time. I am done. Bob looked at Fran. Fran ended the call after thanking the officer. The room went quiet again. Linda sat near the wall, crying into her hands. Jen stood frozen. Fran looked furious and scared at the same time. Bob stayed beside Ian. Ian stared at the dark TV screen down the hall. Then he typed, I wanted a quiet day. Bob nodded, tears slipping down his face. I know. Ian's mouth trembled. The tablet spoke. I am fucking dying and they are still making noise. Bob took Ian's hand carefully. Then we make this room quiet again. Linda wiped her face and looked up. I'll turn off the TV. Fran nodded. I'll lock every door. Jen picked up Ian's charger. I'll keep the tablet charged. Bob checked the suction machine. And I'll stay right here. Ian closed his eyes. His husband was in surgery. His father was in custody. Ray was being questioned. And Ian was left in the middle of a storm he never asked for. But his room went quiet. The doors locked. The TV went dark. The suction machine stayed close. And Bob stayed beside him, guarding the only piece Ian had left. Ian's eyes stayed closed for a few seconds, but his hands did not rest. They shook over the tablet. Bob saw it and leaned closer. Ian. Ian opened his eyes. They were full of panic now, not sadness, not quiet pain. Panic. His fingers hit the tablet hard. The tablet spoke. My fucking father tried to kill my husband and I am in the middle of this fucking nightmare. Linda flinched. Fran's face twisted. Jen started crying again. Bob stayed still, keeping his voice low. I know. Ian shook his head hard. The tablet spoke again. No, you don't. My father hated me being gay. My husband left me because I am sick. Then my father found him and shot him because of me. Bob leaned forward. Ian, listen to me, that is not because of you. Ian's breathing got faster. The tablet spoke. It is about me, officer said it was about me. Bob nodded once. He said your father confronted Rod Matthew about you, that does not mean you caused it. Ian's hands trembled so badly he almost missed the screen. Linda stepped forward but Bob lifted one hand gently, telling her to wait. Ian needed space, not a crowd. The tablet spoke again. I am the reason everything burns. No, Bob said firmly. Ian looked at him. Bob's voice got stronger. You are not the reason your father picked up a gun. You are not the reason Rod Matthew left. You are not the reason Ray lied. You are not the reason grown men keep making cruel choices. Ian's eyes filled. The tablet spoke. Then why am I always in the middle? That broke the room. Linda covered her mouth and sobbed. Fran turned away, wiping her face. Jen whispered, Ian. Bob swallowed hard and sat closer to the bed. Because they keep putting you there, Bob said, not because you belong there. Ian stared at him. Bob kept going. Your father had choices, Rod Matthew had choices, Ray had choices, every single one of them had a chance to do the right thing and they didn't, that is on them. Ian's breathing hitched. The tablet spoke. My father said he did not know me. Bob nodded slowly. I know. Ian typed again. But he knew enough to shoot Rod. Linda's knees almost gave out, she grabbed the chair beside her. Ian, she whispered, I am so sorry. Ian's eyes snapped to her. The tablet spoke. No sorry. Linda froze. Ian typed again. I need someone angry with me. Fran stepped forward immediately. I'm angry. Ian looked at her. Fran's voice shook. I'm so angry I can barely stand still. I'm angry your father denied you. I'm angry he hurt you. I'm angry Rod Matthew left. I'm angry Ray protected excuses instead of protecting you. I'm angry this keeps landing on your body when your body is already fighting enough. Ian's face crumbled. Jen stepped beside Fran. I'm angry too, she said. I'm angry they made you feel like you were the problem. I'm angry you asked for quiet and they still found a way to make noise. Linda wiped her face and forced herself to stand straighter. I'm angry at Rod Desith, she said. I'm angry at your father. I'm angry at the man I married. I'm angry he made you carry his shame, and I'm angry at myself for not protecting you sooner. Ian stared at her. Bob leaned in. And I'm angry, he said. I'm angry that you have ALS and still have to manage everyone else's chaos. I'm angry that you had to ask if you were supposed to cry if your husband dies. I'm angry that you are lying here scared while the people who hurt you keep becoming the story. Ian's breathing shook. The tablet spoke. I hate this story. Bob nodded. I do too. Ian's eyes filled. I wanted boring. Linda gave a broken laugh through her tears. I know, baby. Ian typed harder. I wanted breakfast, clean sheets, tablet charged, no Ray, no cops, no rods. Bob nodded. That is what you asked for. Ian's mouth trembled. The tablet spoke. And my father shot my husband. The words hung in the room again. Nobody tried to make them smaller. Nobody could. Ian suddenly coughed, sharp and wet. Bob moved instantly, reaching for the suction machine. Ian, cough if you can, I'm here. Ian coughed again, panic flashing in his eyes as phlegm rose in his mouth. Linda stepped back, shaking, but she stayed. Fran grabbed tissues. Jen moved the tablet out of the way but kept it close. Bob turned on the suction machine and carefully cleared Ian's mouth. That's it, Bob said, steady and calm. Let it come up, I got you. Ian squeezed his eyes shut, tears sliding down his face as Bob worked. The suction cleared the phlegm. Ian's breathing eased slowly. Bob wiped his mouth gently and kept one hand on his shoulder. You're okay, Bob said, you're safe. Ian opened his eyes, exhausted and furious. His fingers moved again. The tablet spoke. I can't even have a panic attack right. Bob's face broke. No, don't do that. Ian looked at him. Bob shook his head. Your body reacted, that's all. You are allowed to panic. You are allowed to be angry, you are allowed to fall apart, we just stay ready when it happens. Ian stared at him. The tablet spoke. I hate needing ready. Bob nodded. I know. Ian typed slowly now. My father tried to kill Rod Matthew. Bob nodded. Yes. My husband might die. Yes. My father is in jail. Yes. Ray is being questioned. Yes. Ian swallowed hard. The tablet spoke. And I am still here needing a diaper change later. Nobody laughed. But Bob understood what Ian meant. The world had exploded and Ian's body still needed care. ALS did not pause for trauma. Grief did not pause for medical routines. Fear did not stop the need for cleaning, suction, medicine, water, rest, and help. Bob took Ian's hand. Then later we change you, Bob said softly. We clean you, we fix the sheets, we charge the tablet, we keep the machine close, we do the next real thing. Ian's eyes filled. The next real thing. Bob nodded. When the big stuff is too big, we do the next real thing. Linda stepped closer. I can help with sheets. Fran wiped her face. I'll handle the door. Jen picked up the charger. Tablet is charging. Ian looked around at them. The tablet spoke softly. I am scared he will die. Everyone knew which Rod he meant. Bob nodded. I know. Ian typed. I am scared he will live and want to see me. Bob squeezed his hand. Then you decide, not him, not Ray, not the cops, you. Ian blinked. The tablet spoke. I do not know what I want. You don't have to know today, Bob said. Ian looked toward the dark TV down the hall. I want the world to stop saying Rod. Fran walked to the living room and unplugged the TV from the wall. There, she said, no news in this house unless we ask for it. Jen silenced the phones and turned them face down. No alerts. Linda closed Ian's bedroom door halfway. No hallway noise. Bob checked the suction machine again. No surprises we can control. Ian let out a long, shaky breath. Then he typed one more thing. I want 5 minutes where nobody says father, husband, rod, jail, surgery, shot, or sorry. Bob nodded. 5 minutes. Linda sat beside him quietly. Fran stood guard by the door. Jen stayed near the charger. Bob stayed beside Ian, one hand near the suction machine, the other holding Ian's hand. For 5 minutes, nobody said the forbidden words. Nobody explained. Nobody apologized. Nobody asked him to feel anything the right way. Ian lay there, breathing through the wreckage of a day that had become too much for one body, one heart, one life. And for those 5 minutes, the room belonged to him. Not to his father. Not to his husband. Not to the news. Not to the police. Just Ian. Still here. Still breathing. Still chosen. 2 days later, the house was still quiet. Not peaceful. Just quiet. Ian had barely spoken through his tablet except for care needs. Clean. Water. Suction. Tablet. Blanket. Stop. Bob stayed close. Linda helped where Ian allowed her. Fran guarded the door like she expected the world to try to break in again, and Jen kept track of chargers, medicine times, and phone calls. Nobody turned the TV back on. Nobody said Rod's name unless Ian asked. Then Officer Harris called. Bob saw the number on his phone and felt his stomach drop. He stepped into Ian's room. Ian was awake, staring at the wall. Bob held up the phone. It's Officer Harris. Ian's eyes closed. For a second he did not move. Then he reached for the tablet. Speaker. Bob answered and put the phone on speaker. Officer Harris. The officer's voice was lower than before. Bob, is Ian there? Ian typed. I am here. There was a pause. Officer Harris took a breath. Ian, I'm sorry, Rod Matthew passed away this morning from his injuries. The room disappeared. At least that was how it felt. Linda covered her mouth. Jen started crying right away. Fran turned toward the wall and whispered, no. Bob looked at Ian. Ian did not move. His face went blank. His fingers sat on the tablet, but no words came. Officer Harris spoke softly. Rod Desith remains in custody. The charges are being updated. I know this is a lot and I know you asked for facts, so I'm keeping this clear. Rod Matthew is dead. Ian blinked once. Then he typed. The tablet spoke. My father killed my husband. Officer Harris was quiet for a second. Yes. Ian stared at the phone. The tablet spoke again. I hated him. Nobody knew if he meant his father or his husband. Maybe both. Officer Harris said, that is understandable. Ian typed. I loved him. Bob closed his eyes. Ian typed again. He left me. His breathing started to shake. He died. Linda stepped closer, crying. Ian's fingers trembled harder. He left me twice. Bob sat beside him immediately. Ian. Ian shook his head. The tablet spoke louder. He left me when he walked out, then he left me by dying. Bob's voice broke. I know it feels that way. Ian's eyes snapped to him. The tablet spoke. No, it is that way. Bob nodded slowly. Okay, it is that way. Ian looked back at the phone. Where is Ray? Officer Harris answered carefully. Ray is still cooperating with the investigation. Ian typed. Do not let him come here. We won't. If my father asks about me, say no. Officer Harris paused. Say no to what? Ian's face hardened. The tablet spoke. To anything, say no. Officer Harris answered, understood. Ian typed one more thing. I am done. Bob picked up the phone. Thank you for telling us. Officer Harris said, I'll keep you updated on what you need to know. Bob ended the call. The silence after was worse than the call. Ian stared at his tablet. Linda moved closer but stopped herself before touching him. Ian. Ian typed without looking at her. No, sorry. Linda nodded, tears falling. No, sorry. Fran turned around, her eyes red. What do you need? Ian's fingers hovered. For a long time nothing came out. Then the tablet spoke. I don't know. Bob stayed beside him. That's okay. Ian typed again. I was supposed to hate him today. Nobody answered. I was supposed to decide if I wanted to see him when he woke up. His face crumbled. He did not wake up. Jen sobbed into her hand. Fran looked like she wanted to punch a wall. Linda sat down slowly, devastated. Ian typed faster, panic and grief mixing together. My husband abandoned me, my father killed him, I am still sick, I am still dying, what am I supposed to do with that? Bob leaned close. Nothing. Ian looked at him. Bob's voice shook but he stayed steady. You don't do anything with it right now, you don't make sense of it, you don't forgive him, you don't hate him the correct way, you don't grieve the correct way, you just survive the next minute. Ian's eyes filled. The tablet spoke. I don't want to survive the next minute. Linda gasped softly. Bob held Ian's hand tighter. I know. Ian looked at him, tears finally spilling. The tablet spoke again. I don't want to die, I just don't want this minute. Bob nodded, crying now. Then we get through this minute together. Ian's breathing hitched. I don't want Rod dead. Bob whispered, I know. I wanted him sorry. I know. I wanted him to explain. I know. I wanted him to pick me. Bob bowed his head. I know, buddies. Ian's face broke completely. He started to sob, but the sob turned into a cough almost immediately. Bob moved fast. Machine, Bob said. Jen grabbed the tablet and kept it safe. Fran grabbed tissues. Linda stepped back just enough to give Bob room, even though every part of her wanted to hold Ian. Bob turned on the suction machine. I got you, he said. Cough if you can, let it come up. Ian coughed hard, tears running down his face as Bob cleared his mouth carefully. The machine hummed. The room stayed focused. No one screamed. No one ran. No one made Ian feel disgusting. When the coughing eased, Ian fell back against the pillow, exhausted. Bob wiped his mouth gently. You're okay, Bob said softly, you're here. Ian's fingers moved weakly. Jen placed the tablet back where he could reach. The tablet spoke. I hate that grief makes me choke. Bob's face twisted. I hate it too. Ian looked toward Linda. His fingers moved again. Mom. Linda came forward instantly. I'm here. Ian stared at her. The tablet spoke. My dad killed my husband. Linda broke, but she did not look away. Yes. Ian typed. How do I live with that? Linda took a shaky breath. I don't know yet. Ian's eyes searched hers. Linda kept going. But you will not live with it alone. Fran stepped closer. Not alone. Jen nodded through tears. Never alone. Bob adjusted Ian's blanket. 1 minute at a time. Ian closed his eyes. The tablet spoke one last time, soft and tired. I wanted boring. Bob leaned his forehead near Ian's hand. I know. The house stayed quiet after that. Not because there was peace. Because grief had entered the room and nobody knew how to speak around it yet. Rod Matthew was dead. Rod Desith was in custody. Ray was somewhere with police. And Ian was still in his bed, still sick, still breathing, still surrounded by people who had finally learned that love was not a speech. Love was staying. Love was suctioning through the panic. Love was telling the truth. Love was sitting in the wreckage and saying, 1 minute at a time, you are not doing this alone. At the station, Rod Desith sat across from Officer Harris with his hands cuffed to the table. He did not look sorry. He did not look scared. He looked angry. Officer Harris set the file down in front of him. Rod Matthew died from his injuries, the officer said. You understand what that means for you. Rod Desith leaned back in the chair. That guy made my son into a damn cripple. Officer Harris's eyes hardened. ALS is a medical disease. It is not caused by another person. Rod shook his head. I'm not talking about ALS. The officer stared at him. Rod leaned forward, his voice cold. The gayness, that's the sin. I didn't want my son going to hell, so I did what needed to be done. Officer Harris sat still for a moment, like he needed to make sure he had heard him clearly. Then he said, You murdered your son's husband. Rod's jaw tightened. I saved my son. No, Officer Harris said firmly, You hurt him, you denied him, you abandoned him, then you killed someone he loved and called it saving him. Rod slammed his cuffed hands against the table. He was my son first. Officer Harris did not flinch. Ian is a grown man, he had a husband, he had a life, you did not own him. Rod's face twisted. That man poisoned him. No, the officer said, your hate did. Rod looked away, breathing hard. Officer Harris opened the file. Ian is dying, he asked for peace, and now he has to live with the fact that his father killed his husband. For the first time, something flickered in Rod's face. But it was not regret. It was pride mixed with rage. He'll understand one day. Officer Harris leaned closer. No, he won't. Rod glared at him. The officer's voice stayed steady. He already knows exactly what you did, and he said if you ask about him, the answer is no to anything, his words. Rod's expression cracked. My son said that. Officer Harris nodded. Yes. Rod looked down at the table. For a few seconds the room was silent. Then Rod whispered, Linda turned him against me. Officer Harris shook his head. You did that yourself. Rod's face hardened again. I'm his father. Officer Harris stood, collecting the file. And now you're the man who killed his husband. Rod's eyes followed him to the door. Officer Harris stopped before leaving. One more thing, Ian is not the one going to hell in this story. Then he walked out. Back at Ian's house, Bob sat beside Ian's bed while Linda, Fran, and Jen stayed close. The phone rang. Bob looked at the screen. Officer Harris. Ian opened his eyes and reached for the tablet. Speaker. Bob answered. Officer Harris's voice came through. I wanted to update you before rumors or news reports did. Ian typed. Facts. The officer took a breath. Your father confessed to shooting Rod Matthew. He claimed he did it because he believed Rod Matthew had influenced you into being gay. The room went cold. Linda closed her eyes and whispered, Oh my God. Fran's face filled with disgust. Jen started crying silently. Ian stared at the phone. His fingers moved slowly. The tablet spoke. My father killed my husband because I am gay. Bob's jaw tightened. Officer Harris answered carefully. Your father said that, but Ian, that does not make this your fault. Ian typed. I know. Everyone looked at him. Ian stared at the phone, his face pale but suddenly clear. The tablet spoke again. I know it is not my fault, he hated me before Rod Matthew. Rod Matthew did not make me gay. Bob's eyes filled. Linda covered her mouth, crying. Ian kept typing. He killed Rod because he hated the truth. Officer Harris said softly, yes. Ian swallowed hard. The tablet spoke. Did he ask about me? Officer Harris paused. Yes. Ian's face did not change. The tablet spoke. And you said no. I said no, Officer Harris answered, just like you asked. Ian closed his eyes. A tear slipped down his cheek. Bob wiped it away gently. Ian typed again. Good. Linda stepped closer. Ian. Ian opened his eyes and looked at her. The tablet spoke. He does not get to use father anymore. Linda nodded through tears. No, he does. Ian typed. He is Rod Desith. Bob nodded. Okay. Fran's voice shook. He doesn't deserve Dad. Jen wiped her face. He doesn't deserve you. Ian looked at the phone again. The tablet spoke. Officer, if he says he saved me, tell him he killed the last piece of husband I had left. Officer Harris was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I will make sure your statement is recorded. Ian typed. No, not statement, truth. Yes, Officer Harris said, truth. Ian leaned back exhausted. The tablet spoke again. I am done. Bob thanked the officer and ended the call. The room stayed silent. Ian stared at the ceiling. Then his fingers moved once more. My father thought Gamey needed saving. Linda started crying harder. Ian looked at her. The tablet spoke. But Sickme needed him to stay. Bob lowered his head. Fran turned toward the wall. Jen sat down shaking. Ian's breathing trembled. He did neither. Bob took Ian's hand. No, he didn't. Ian closed his eyes. The grief in the room shifted. It was not only grief for Rod Matthew now. It was grief for the father Ian never truly had. A father who chose hate over love. A father who chose violence over acceptance. A father who thought saving his son meant destroying the people his son loved. Ian opened his eyes one last time. His fingers moved slowly. I am gay, I am sick, I am still me. Bob squeezed his hand. Yes, you are. Linda wiped her tears and leaned closer. You are still my son. Fran stepped beside the bed. You are still my brother. Jen nodded. You are still here. Ian looked at all of them. The tablet spoke softly. Then stay. Bob answered first. We're staying. Linda nodded. I'm staying. Fran said I'm staying. Jen whispered I'm staying. Ian closed his eyes again, exhausted by the truth, by the loss, by the hate that had tried to swallow his life whole. But the room did not empty. Nobody left. Rod Desith had chosen violence. Rod Matthew was gone. Ray was gone. But Ian was still there. Gay. Sick. Heartbroken. Alive. And finally surrounded by people who understood that love did not mean saving someone from who they were. Love meant staying with them as they were. At the police station, Officer Harris stood at the interrogation room door, his hand on the file. Rod Desith sat at the table, still cuffed, still angry, still convinced he had done something righteous. Officer Harris looked back at him. Your family is not coming. Rod's face barely moved. I know. The officer watched him carefully. Rod leaned back, staring at the wall. I saved my son, now when ALS takes him he will be with God. Officer Harris's jaw tightened. You won't, you know that, right? Rod finally looked at him. What? Officer Harris stepped back toward the table. You keep talking about heaven like you did something holy, you killed a man, you destroyed your son's peace, you turned his last chapter into a crime scene. Rod's eyes went cold. I killed a man I know I will burn. The room went silent. Officer Harris stared at him. Rod said it again, quieter this time. I know I will burn, but Ian will not. Officer Harris shook his head slowly. You still don't understand. Ian did not need saving from love, he needed saving from you. Rod's mouth twitched with anger. He was my son. He is your son, Officer Harris said, and you made sure that if he thinks of you now, he will think of fear, blood, police, and grief. Rod looked away. For the first time, his confidence cracked. Not into regret. Into something emptier. Officer Harris opened the door. Your family is done protecting your version of the story. Rod looked up fast. Linda will come. No, Officer Harris said, she won't. Fran. No. Jen. No. Rod's voice dropped. Ian. Officer Harris stared at him. You already know his answer. Rod swallowed. The officer said it anyway. No. Rod's face tightened, but he said nothing. Officer Harris stepped out and shut the door behind him. Back at Ian's house, the phone sat on speaker beside the bed. Officer Harris had called to give Bob the update, and Ian had asked to hear it himself. No one wanted him to. But Ian had typed one word. Truth. So Bob put the call on speaker. Officer Harris's voice came through quietly. Ian, your father understands your family is not coming to see him. Ian stared at the phone. His fingers moved. Did he ask for me? Officer Harris paused. Yes. Ian's tablet spoke. And you said no. Yes, Officer Harris said, I said no. Ian closed his eyes. A tear slipped down his cheek, but his face did not break. Linda sat beside him, one hand near his blanket but not touching until he wanted her to. Fran stood at the window. Jen sat near the tablet charger. Bob stayed close to the suction machine. Ian typed again. What did he say? Officer Harris was quiet for a moment. Ian, I don't know if hearing that helps you. Ian opened his eyes. The tablet spoke firmly. Facts. Bob looked at the phone. Officer, just tell him plainly. Officer Harris exhaled. He said he believed he saved you. He said when ALS takes you, you will be with God. Linda covered her mouth and cried. Fran whispered, that sick bastard. Jen looked down, shaking. Ian stared at nothing. Then he typed. He thinks killing Rod Matthew fixed me. Officer Harris answered, yes. Ian's face twisted. The tablet spoke. I was never broken because I was gay. Bob's voice cracked. No, you weren't. Ian typed again. I am broken because people keep leaving and killing and lying. Linda sobbed softly. Officer Harris said, Ian, your father also admitted he knows he killed a man. Ian's eyes shifted back to the phone. The officer continued. He said he know.